Okay, so there was a guy. He was going into the hospital. All right, he was getting a fairly routine procedure done, but as he was on the operating table, he's looking at the doctor. Doctor's looking at him. The guy's looking pretty nervous. Doctor goes, "What's wrong?" Guy goes, "Doc, after this is all over, am I going to be able to play the piano?" Doctor said, "For a vasectomy? Yeah, why not?" The guy goes, "Nice. I always wanted to play an instrument."
Hey, I found his dad.
I think Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex, he's Ethan, and tonight we're doing a follow-up to a conversation we had almost 2 years ago, July of 2023, about feeding our kids. At that time, I had about a 16-month-old. Ethan's second daughter wasn't quite one. And we thought this topic could use some attention. One, because I listened back to that episode earlier today before we recorded. There's a lot different. Some still the same. But Ethan also wanted to bring this up because a lot has changed when you're dealing with double the personalities of kids that you're trying to feed. In that episode, we talked a lot about second kidding hard with our second kids. Well, his daughter is 2 and on the north side of 2.5. My son's 3 now. And if you're a parent of a toddler, you know they have strong opinions. So we're going to get into that. We got some story time. We're going to work on the dad bod. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thanks for joining us. This is a reminder before we do get started that you should subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, especially on YouTube. YouTube, we post the videos the night before, so you'll have them first thing. Whether you like to stay up late to listen to us, whether you like to get up super early in the morning, or whether you want to just see our beautiful faces, YouTube is the best place. But Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever podcasts, we're there. We'll meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
But Ethan, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. For those of you watching,
Are you better than last week?
I am doing better than last week. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
Last week I vaguely touched on, a lot of stuff going on with my day job. I've not figured out how to turn the millions of you listeners into my full-time job yet, but there was a big decision I needed to make, and I made a decision, and I'm now just waiting to find out if it was the right or the wrong decision. I don't know when I'm going to find out. It could be as early as tomorrow. It could be, in a couple weeks. I really don't know. It's a weird position to be in when you know that your fate has already been determined, but you don't know what it is yet. You're just kind of waiting for somebody to decide they're ready to tell you the fate of your career. So, that's just kind of where I'm at right now. But I'm a lot more at peace than I was last week.
Yeah, for those curious, Ethan started an OnlyFans. That's what he's talking about.
It's true. It's for the after hours of this podcast.
Yeah.
You all know I talk about my full nude weigh-ins. That episode is completely nude. So
the Jolly Ginger on OnlyFans, go find him. That might be a real person. It's not Ethan. Please don't.
It's not me. Yeah, you're not.
I don't know. But Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing better.
Thank you.
I'm glad you were able to get the first rung of the ladder on the way to some semblance of peace.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about that a lot offline. So I'm happy for you on that front, and I do hope it shakes out well in your favor.
Thank you.
Whatever that ends up getting defined as, because I know it's not necessarily a straight line.
Very true. Could go a lot of different ways or all the same way. We'll see.
Yeah. I can start us off with story time.
Okay.
Because I had already thought about what I wanted to do for story time. And then I listened to our previous episode on feeding our kids. And in that episode, your story time was about golf lessons with your daughter.
Oh,
And I decided that I was going to talk about golf lessons with my daughter.
there you go.
Because in that one, almost 2 years ago, I talked about how our local course does a golf academy for juniors. And it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that I actually got her in there. Variety of factors. First being, we tried to go, and what the website said wasn't the actual day. And so there was some confusion amongst the clubhouse staff. And like, I never happened to call the pro at a time where I could get them on the phone and just sort of nail it down. They've finally gotten their ducks in a row there. What's listed on the website is what it's going to be. And
It's usually a
I
good sign.
forgot about it as a thing to do. But the most convenient time for us to actually do it is on Sundays at 11:30. But it's kind of tight because we go to church every Sunday, and that gets out roughly at 11 and is maybe 15, 20 minutes away from the course. And so it's a little bit of like, okay, kids, get your act together and go. And our church usually has a coffee hour afterwards where there's coffee and snacks. And so they're kids. We'll get into this in the episode, but they're into the snacks. And so I have to tell my daughter, hey, we can't stop at coffee hour. We just got to roll to the course. And a little bit of like, I don't want to drag her away from something that she says she wants to do something else that I think she will enjoy. So I kind of had to massage it and convince her like, hey, you know, we got to do this. If you want to do this, let's try it out. And if you hate it, we won't come back and we can do coffee hour. Now, I will say this about our city county course. They have built over the last several years, and I've probably mentioned this before, but they built out their course. They basically made a decision of like, we could throw $500,000 into this course and keep it the goat track that it is and lose money on it every year. Or we could throw $8 million into this course and we could build a top golf facility and a restaurant and make it a destination that people don't necessarily want to go play 9 or 18 holes, who aren't serious golfers, want to come to. And so they did the second one. And so there is a restaurant. So she goes to the junior academy, and it's in the top golf like covered hitting bays where there's wait service. And so they came, and I ordered some mac and cheese and drink, and I ordered myself a sandwich, and we split some fries kind of thing. And so it turns into like a fun thing of like, she gets to hit off the mats and all this stuff, but I get to eat. But it's going really well. And we've done it the last 2 weeks, and it went so well that we decided to sign her up for a junior golf membership that they have.
Nice.
And I had a membership when I was a kid to the semi-private course that my dad and I went to, and it was just like a discounted rate, and I essentially had a debit card where my dad would preload some money on there, and I could pay for my greens fees at a discounted rate, all that stuff. This thing that my daughter has is $60 for the year, and she can play for free.
Wow.
Anytime she wants to go out, she could, if she wanted to, I would let her walk 9 holes by herself, because they have a 9-hole course, 18-hole course. The 18-hole course, you have to ride a cart, and so she could ride that for free as long as I was coming with her. And this is available for kids 6 to 18. And yeah, so she
Wow.
gets half
6 to 18?
Yeah, 6 to 18. So I think once you turn 18, but they are really, really invested in growing the young game. And I'm like, okay, $60 for the, and the junior academy, which is usually $20 a session, is also half price.
Oh, wow.
With her
That's
membership.
a great deal.
If we go 6 more times, that is paid for itself, let alone any rounds that we do, which is probably something like 15 to 20 for 9 holes.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
It's a heck of
It's actually
beyond
yeah.
a great deal.
Yeah, it's probably the best
It's
deal I've
also-
ever heard. In all of deals.
It's up there.
Yeah.
It's up there versus someone, like splitting a lottery ticket with you for no reason.
Yeah.
But it's up there. So that's been a lot of fun. She's really enjoyed it. I credit the coach. They do a really good job of keeping it simple, just making it fun. They're not out there, working on any, working on a ton of mechanics, but just keeping it loose, making sure they swing through the ball, getting, a decent semblance of a swing. Doesn't matter if they kind of use their whole body with it, but she's also got the hitting bays. And the hitting bays have like games on them if you want to like gamify it, right? Because again, Top Golf, right? Yeah. And so she found the Angry Birds game, and she was sitting there with her shots playing Angry Birds while she was doing it, having some snacks and getting some coaching. And I was like, this is a heck of a deal. So that was a lot of fun. And my son is really into it. He came with my wife, and we were all there. We basically had lunch there, and he took my daughter's putter down to the putting green and was like putting around, because you have to be 4 to actually do the junior academy. So he can't quite start yet. And he's pretty frustrated about that.
Sure.
Keeps letting me know.
Sure.
But yeah,
that's great.
I'm excited for that. We've got some plans in the near future to go out and play some 9 holes. But this is a PSA to all the dads out there who want to play more golf but can't because you got family commitments. If you get the kids into the golf, then you can dad and golf at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's getting to springtime here in DC, so my daughter would like to do the golfing again. Our issue is simply just that we have our weekends kind of booked with her other activities at the moment, so we just I really have to figure out when I can really carve out the time to take her, because I want to, but it's just, if I say, hey, do you want to, I don't want her to skip gymnastics or ballet because we paid for that. So, and it's, so we're just kind of, that's where we are, but that's awesome. And that's great. My story is also sports related. Actually, it's entirely sports themed. So last weekend, I went to a wedding in Manassas, Virginia. It's about an hour drive here from where I live in Silver Spring, Maryland. And, it was a great time. Saw some friends, had some drinks, did a lot of dancing, thought I drank enough water, apparently did not drink enough water. So the next morning I was feeling pretty rough, and I had to drive back, which, made it through totally fine. It was rough before I drove and rough after I drove, but I knew I had to get home, 1, to relieve the babysitter, and 2, because at 3 p.m., my beloved Whale Sharks of the Tacoma Youth Soccer League, we had practice, and I'm the head coach. We were possibly going to have to cancel for rain, and I sent an email to the team parents letting them all know that by 2:15, I would let them know if practice was still on. It hadn't rained yet, but I was getting reports that the fields were still okay after being, apparently too muddy earlier. And I just kept thinking, I hope it rains. I hope it rains. I hope it rains. It gets to be about 2:10, and I came to a big decision. Am I going to be the dad that cancels youth soccer over a hangover? Or am I just going to power through? And I powered through. And we had practice. Everybody had a great time. I made it through. And this was really a story about endurance. Some might say there's a hero. Some might say there's an anti-hero. I don't really know. I just know that the Whale Sharks had a great time. And that's really all that matters. So, yeah.
What's the Whale Sharks record on the season?
So it's simply just like an hour of practice just to get the kids to run around. It's not a league that has games at this age, really. It's honestly just practice. So we do a lot of drills. It's honestly just how can I get these kids as tired as possible in an hour, while also teaching them a little bit of soccer, which I am not good at. But one of my assistant coaches, who, is another parent from school whose kid was on the team last year, who wasn't really coaching, but whenever we'd have a water break, he was kicking around the soccer ball a little bit. And eventually, I go up to him because I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, did you play? He goes, played D3. And I was like, you played college soccer and I'm up here just talking out of my butt.
We got a really tense situation here.
100%. So, I convinced him to be one of the assistant coaches this year. And, there's now 3 of us, and we have a good time. We each take a couple of drills. I run warm-ups, and I've got the whistle, so that's pretty cool. And then, the actual soccer skill drills this guy takes, and then a couple games the third coach takes. So, basically, we do essentially, we break up the soccer practice into increments of like 7 to 10 minutes with a lot of water breaks. Yeah. And then we've learned from last season to just put snack right at the end, no snack break, because then they don't play the second half. And then usually for the last 10 to 15 minutes before snack at 3:55, we do a scrimmage, just the team, have them wear pennies, the other half don't. And yeah, it's usually a fun time, but made it through, persevered.
Yeah. One of my enduring memories from when I played youth sports was playing baseball. And my dad was the coach. And so a lot of people, look back on those kind of things, pretty fondly when their dad was their coach. And I think it doesn't matter how good you are. And my dad's a key example of that because we lost every game. But maybe to this day, he still contends, even though me and my friends were like, we never won a game. He contends that we won one, and I just don't know that that's the hill I'm ever going to die on. Of like, no, out of like the 15 games we played, we were 1-14, not 0-15. Like, I don't think that's
No, I respect that. Credit where credit's due. I have to side with dad coach on this one. We're a fraternity.
He doesn't want to be winless on his career record because he did retire from coaching.
There you go.
After that season.
There you go.
At least head coaching. So yeah.
All right. Well, good for him. I respect that hill. Yeah. So Alex, you had mentioned earlier that I brought up wanting to talk about this, and I didn't realize it was almost 2 years to the day since we spoke about it. But as Alex mentioned, when we last
July 23rd, I don't know 2 years to the day.
Oh, okay.
Accurate, but we're here.
All right. Yeah, we're close. So, things are obviously a bit different now. As Alex mentioned, I have a 2.5-year-old who has a lot of opinions about food, and I have a almost 5.5-year-old who's got even more opinions about food. So now the challenge hasn't been so much like it was in the last episode about, how do you train your kids how to eat? But now it is for me, it's how do I make sure that at least 2 of the 3 meals a day are good, knowing that 5 days a week, it is just lunch at school. And it's kind of a crapshoot, usually based on how the other kids are eating or what's going on in the classroom. So, the goal is breakfast and dinner. So we did curbside pickup this week, and our normal box of Eggo waffles did not make it in the bag. Not sure what happened there, but usually I'm pretty solid with a breakfast of both girls like an Eggo waffle with some Nutella on it. They usually both eat 2. I usually call myself a champion because that's a pretty solid breakfast. I wish they didn't necessarily always go with Nutella because I have to be very particular or very careful making sure that the 2.5-year-old, I've cleaned her up entirely because it is, of course, a nut-free school. So, I'm always taking that risk, the lives of the other kids. But, Darwinism. Anyway, so
hopefully they don't lick her.
That is the hope. That is the hope. There is one boy in her class I'm a little iffy about on the licking, but we'll move on. And then for, so usually that's breakfast. Otherwise it's cereal or something else. They usually do okay. Today I had to tell the 2.5-year-old that if she finished her cereal, she could maybe have a treat when she came home. Forgot to tell her mom that I made that promise. Thankfully, she's 2.5 and forgot as well that was on the line. So I didn't hear about complaining. But with the 5.5-year-old, we were getting to the point where she was being really repetitive and kind of picky with her eating. And as you know this, Alex, I have a firm belief that picky eaters grow up to be boring, picky people. And I do not want my kids to be that. And my biggest example is you can tell a lot about a person by their favorite kind of pizza. I believe that if your favorite pizza is just a cheese pizza, that you are in fact a blank canvas. Cheese pizza is wonderful, but it is the canvas in which you decorate the flavor. You could be a purist and like pepperoni. You could be a vegetarian and just want some mushrooms on it. You can even be one of those weird people who likes pineapple on their pizza. That's fine.
Pineapple on pizza.
That's fine. It's like weird. I love pineapple. I love pizza. It just doesn't mesh for me. If you put it in front of me, I'd stick it in my mouth. But like, you know what I mean? It's just like not what I'm going for. Anyway,
That's what she said.
it is what she said. But I believe that you can tell a lot about a person, and this is very anecdotally. If you think about some of the most boring people you've ever had a meal with, they probably had a pretty bland plate. And I'm saying this based off of lots of meals over 36 years of my life with various different people. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. So the thing that my wife and I started doing a couple weeks ago is we've gotten a lot better at meal planning now that I've returned to the office full time. We have to get really ahead of the game to make sure that we can always cook a full dinner the night, make sure we have all the groceries we need. Make sure if there's any like night before something that's like really going to take a while to prep, maybe we get it done the night before. So we've gotten a lot better about meal planning, but that has also turned into a good activity because we let my kids participate in the meal planning for the week. And some of that is pretty standard. On Wednesday nights, my wife makes pancakes. On Friday, we usually do pizza Friday. Whether that be a frozen pizza or one of two pizza places, or even making our own pizza. But those are the two constants. Lots of times we'll have a Zoom dinner with my mother on Sunday. So it's basically 4 days of the week where we involve them in the decision making so that they could, in fact, have more say in their meal. We keep it within reason, but it has been a really useful way to ensure that they had better dinners until tonight. My daughter, my 5.5-year-old, she specifically picked, and she said so, on Thursday, I want Mongolian beef. Actual sentence. We have a pretty good Mongolian beef recipe that doesn't take too long to make, usually a big hit. She chose it. The 2.5-year-old had, I think, 5 pieces of steak, 2 red peppers, and I'd say like an eighth of a full-size onion that was cut. And the 5.5-year-old said, "This food's making my tummy hurt." And we said, "You chose this." And she goes, "I don't want it. I want something else." And we said, "You chose this. You can either eat this or not eat." And at one point she went to her room and then, screamed saying, "Let me out, let me out." A lot of other stuff happened tonight that went into that attitude. But I thought after you and I talked about earlier today, how I found something that I thought worked. Of course, tonight it didn't. And I just wanted to share that little supplemental story time on top of the episode. But I've been rambling. So you take the floor for it.
No, I love it. I love it because it is true. Right. Since we last discussed it, right? My daughter was younger than your oldest is now. Mm-hmm. And my son was 16 months. And we also let them participate in the meal planning, right? I've always been pretty big on meal planning since we've had kids. Even though I work from home, like I just want to get all the groceries in one go. I don't want to have to run back to the store. I don't want to have to figure something out. I want to make sure that like I know what we're cooking, and it also helps me mentally when like I can sort of budget my time for cooking, and I get excited. I enjoy cooking. Cooking, I would say, is a hobby of mine. It's taken a little bit of a backseat with kids because I let them pick sometimes, and they don't pick things that would challenge me culinarily, or like if I do pick something that is maybe takes a little more finesse, they're not going to appreciate any of the finesse that I put into it. And I balance that against my wife, who really appreciates my cooking when I'm cooking what I call grown-up meals. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is I let my kids sort of have some say over the menu, but we try to, make sure that there's a protein in there. And so we might give them suggestions on how things could be, no pun intended, beefed up or added, because they'll just say mac and cheese. And what they don't mean explicitly is mac and cheese with like broccoli and chicken in it. They mean Annie's brand boxed mac and cheese, both of them, where there's a riot. And so I have to go, okay, that's great, but that's a side. We have decided that mac and cheese in our house is a side. It can't be a main because you've said that I can't put stuff in it. And I don't want any of this stuff in it. You don't want me to hand shred cheese and put a nice crust and oven bake it and fresh pasta. No, you want boxed crap. Great, fine, deal. So what they come with is I want salad, mac and cheese, and hot dogs. Solid meal. I've got no qualms about it. My wife, it's like, meh. Little kid food, and I'm just like, you freaking love hot dogs. Like, stop this. But we figured out how this happened on Tuesday. We figured out how to sort of make it our own, right? And so my wife was looking through our fridge. She was like, okay, we've got mustard, we've got pickles, we've got tomatoes, we've got relish, we've got this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden, she was like, I could make a Chicago dog, right? And so put a pickle spear, some tomato, like really just we had some random, a little container of already diced onions that I hadn't used all of for a previous recipe. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I took her idea and I read, because I was just going to throw some mustard on there, for calorie count purposes or whatever, and just, do that and maybe have a protein shake later to supplement. But I was like, no, like pickles literally say 0 calories on the jar. Tomatoes aren't much. Relish isn't much. Onions aren't much. Like, let's beef this up. Let's volumetrically do this. And I felt like I had a much more adult meal while my kids had their hot dogs with ketchup and mustard and their mac and cheese. And I took a smaller portion of mac and cheese, bigger portion of salad. But we give them a little bit of choice. Basically, they each kind of get a meal. And it works out because, like, on Fridays, for example, right now our childcare schedule is such that my mom picks them both up from school and keeps them through dinner. She returns around 6:30. And so they eat with her and they can kind of pick something there. And then Mondays, we always have Jimmy John subs because we have gymnastics kind of far away. We have to travel back, and it's just become a thing. Jimmy John Nastics is what we call it. Jimmy John Nastics Mondays. And so we have our subs, and I'm like, that covers most of it. That kind of leaves like Sunday and one other weekday, because then we're kind of just scrounging on stuff on Saturday, or we might get takeout. One thing I mentioned a couple of years ago is like, we don't get a lot of takeout. We don't get much takeout at all. I wouldn't say we get a ton of takeout, but we are much more lenient with it because we try to give our kids a little bit more choice of like, they may not be fully hungry for a meal. They may have been snacking all day on Saturday. They may just want chicken nuggets, and we just kind of keep a bag in the fridge. And we're much more concerned now than I think I was then about like, eat what I prepare for you, and like, make sure you eat something. Make sure you're sort of checking all the big boxes here. Like, get some protein in. Protein needs aren't super high for little kids. They need a lot more carbs for their energy than they do protein. I think it's like up until through elementary school, it's something like 20, 25 grams of protein a day. Like, this can be accomplished by a couple of breakfast sausages and a little bit of chicken at dinner or something like that, and you're golden. So I don't worry too much about them eating exactly like I eat. And I'm like, I'm just going to modify myself around them, but trying to make sure now that they're just sort of checking all the boxes. And I had a moment where this sort of came back, where we don't try to dictate really heavily what they eat or don't eat, but we do try to sort of help guide their decisions, right? Instead of asking like, oh, you should pick something healthier, we go, do you want something sweet or something salty? Do you want it hot? Do you want it cold? Do you want it soft? Do you want it crunchy? And that sort of helps them think through things. And we also define things. Like you can pop yourself. My daughter loves to pop herself a bowl of popcorn. We have just kernels and we have a bowl that you can like throw some coconut oil and pop them yourself. And she loves to do that. But we always tell her this is not very filling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I don't care. But if you are hungry and your body is like, I am hungry, this isn't going to fill that. Candy, same thing. You can have this, but if you are hungry, you are still going to be hungry after. And it's always kind of like a time constraint thing of like, we only have this many minutes before it's time to get ready for bed. So like, if you are hungry, let's solve the hungry so you don't go to bed hungry versus just having candy because you see it on the counter and that's the easy answer. But then if they're like, no, I just want some candy, great. And last night, after having dinner, my daughter was sitting there looking. I didn't say a word to her. She goes, I want a snack. I said, well, I did say a word to her. I said, what do you want? She goes, I want some candy. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust you here. Here's the candy we have from, Halloween, Valentine's Day, whatever. We just kind of keep a little bag there of things. And I'm like, what do you want? And she goes, actually, I want some more of the salad. I'm actually hungry. And she chose to have salad instead of the candy I was willingly showing her a bag of. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Okay, I'll take that win. Great talk. I'll get you some salad.
So we're in a similar position where, I kind of take something from when I was, so my dad's an amazing cook. And it was very rarely a situation, and except, once I was older and, could drive really, it got to the point where on the rare occasions where I didn't want what he was making, basically my dad pivoted to, well, this is the dinner I made. If you don't want it, you can cook your own thing or go buy yourself some food. And, I didn't have a lot of money then. And I was also pretty lazy. So normally I just ate it. Obviously, I can't say that exact same sentence to a 5.5-year-old. But what we do is, especially since they're involved in the meal planning, you have to finish that first portion we put on your plate. It's really not a lot. And if you're still hungry, then you need to have a little more dinner before you can go totally off menu into snack treat town, because she hasn't learned the sentence like I have a separate stomach for dessert yet, which I think everybody said a version of when we were growing up. But it's definitely we want to say, look, one thing fills your tummy, the other thing does not fill your tummy. You can have the other thing, but if you are still hungry, again, and I think I'm going to pivot and do some of the things you just said, like with some of your terminology, and see if it works better for us, because we usually get into a bit of an argument. But she ultimately realizes that if she does want the treat or the snack, you got to fill your tummy first. Or not like fill, but you got to do the best thing you can to ensure. So I did want to touch on the hot dogs though. It's very fun, or mac and cheese. It's very funny that you've determined that mac and cheese is a side, because one of our regular go-to meals is mac and cheese and hot dogs as like the combined dish. So
sure.
So
my kids would revolt. They want them separate.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't listen.
So,
I could put anything in there. I could put manna from heaven and they would be like, nah.
Interesting. So it's really funny because, we try to make it, last time all we had was just like Nathan's, 98% lean hot dog, whatever. We used that. Usually what we're putting in there is like it's called like there's a brand like Johnsonville, and it's like turkey cheddar sausages is essentially what we put in there, because mac and cheese doesn't have enough cheese. So I need a cheddar filled sausage, but we do try to, we do. So that's basically the meal: mac and cheese, and some kind of hot dog sausage. And then, I dress mine up with truffle powder and red pepper flakes. My youngest wants truffle and salt and vinegar seasoning, and sometimes tagine. If my 2.5-year
together,
my 2.5-year-old's dream meal is a plate with a pile of tagine, a pile of Old Bay, a pile of truffle, and a pile of salt and vinegar, and she will just lick them all up together. That is her dream meal. And sometimes she just says,
little girl right there.
yeah, she goes, more tagine, please. And we say, what would you like your tagine on? She goes, tagine. Right. And
Shot of apple juice.
yeah, it'd be great. So
Lick the back of the hand and take a shot of apple juice there.
it is really great. And and then I mentioned lunch earlier, which is usually 5 days a week done at school. A lot of times that was dinner a hit. All right, let's put that in her lunch. My older daughter, she basically will only eat for lunch what we call a toddler charcuterie board. She likes ideally she's got a bento box looking thing with five sections. One section has a like Whole Foods brand, no sugar added fruit strip. She has a granola bar. She has some pretzels and Pirate's Booty in one. She has whatever fruit of the week we have in the other. She has little slices of pepperoni, and then usually like a small little bit of goldfish for her dairy, and that is essentially the toddler charcuterie board that my 5.5-year-old has had for lunch consistently, and usually eats the whole thing for the last 3 years. And frankly, she's eating. So you know what? We'll take it.
This reminds me of something that happened. I think it was last night. I was making pizza. This was another one of the kids' requests, and I was making pizza, and my wife was outside with them, and she came in to make a charcuterie board, not for the kids, for herself, because she needs something to tide her over until dinner was ready. Fine, totally understandable. She's one of those people that she can get caught up in work, and then like 3:30 hits, and she's like, "Oh my God, I didn't eat lunch, and I'm gonna die." And I need now 2 meals before dinner, which is like 6:30 maybe.
Sure.
So she's making herself this charcuterie board, and she goes like, "All right, what are some things that these little gremlins aren't gonna grab?" And so she grabs herself some pickles, some olives, some everything bagel cashews, some like jalapeno ranch Cape Cod chips, and some other things. And I go, they're going to be all over that. And she goes, here's hoping. And she comes back 10 minutes later with an empty charcuterie board, just going, why did we give our kids such good palates?
Yep. That's so funny.
Because they ate like, she's like, what kids like olives like this? And I'm like, our kids that explicitly say, I like my daughter's over there just like eating the green olives, going, Mom, what's your favorite type of olive? Green olive or black olive? And my wife's like, well, I like both. She goes, eating the green olives. I like black olives better, but these are pretty good.
So what's funny is I mentioned earlier, your favorite pizza topping tells a lot about who you are as a personality. 2.5-year-old, her favorite pizza topping is Kalamata olive. That is what she wants.
That's my favorite olive.
Yeah, it's the best olive. Yeah.
It didn't ask me, but I was inside. My son's favorite pizza topping is cheese, but which, I'm not gonna like.
Yeah.
3. I'm gonna give him a break for a little while, but he likes pepperoni pizza with the pepperoni pulled off.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that is better to him than cheese. And he gets upset.
So he likes pepperoni.
Have it out.
He likes pepperoni essence.
I guess.
Okay.
But like he likes to. I think he likes the pulling the pepperoni off. And my daughter's like, "Give it to me. Give it to me." And he's like, "Okay, here you go. Here's pepperoni." And so what I do, because I'm like, no, I'm not going to waste pepperoni on that, is like I have a really large baking sheet. And I roll out like a pound of dough and I let it rest and I keep pressing it until it's super thin. And I get it over this like huge baking sheet that basically fills my oven for the crust. And when I'm making my own, and then I just take the last strip of it and I just don't put pepperoni. And and we have to have it out because I'm like, I'm not putting pepperoni on your pizza for you to pull it off and pull the cheese off and then go, I don't like it because it doesn't have cheese on it.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? I'd rather have this fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will dab a pepperoni on yours for you or
Mhm.
something like that. But, like, yeah.
So-
my son likes cheese with the pepperoni pulled off.
So my
Would
five,
be his favorite go-to.
so my 5.5-year-old likes pepperoni pizza, but she likes to pull them off and then eat them separately. No, she doesn't give them away, but she just, again, I think it's the fact that she too likes the pepperoni essence, but she also likes cheese essence on her pepperoni. Yet, you'd think you'd eat them together and you'd get the perfect bite. We get into some arguments over crust every now and then, but especially when she says the crust is too hard, and I said this is stuffed crust with cheese in it. Then she takes a bite and she goes, "That's not bad." Yeah, you should have tried it first. So, anyway, did you have anything more on how feeding kids has changed over the years? I think I covered everything I wanted to say.
I think
full.
generally for us, right? I could go into more anecdotes and things that don't really like push forward any particular the topic,
Sure.
but I think in general for us, the challenge has been navigating a fourth personality, right? On that big level, right? Like, I cook what I want to cook, and I do the large majority of the cooking in our house, and so like I get some say. I ask every other member of the house what they want, and if they don't contribute ideas, then it's kind of like your dad. Like, you can eat or you can go make something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's generally my thing. But I will say how things have changed for us, just like structure-wise, is like I mentioned in our last episode how we used to do scrounge nights. And we still do those, but it's a much more like ad hoc thing based on leftovers because we don't try to create as many leftovers. One, our kids are just bigger. They're eating more food than they were. And so that kind of kills the leftovers, but I'm also just not making as many things that make leftovers, right? Like, we had a pack of 6 hot dogs. I ate 2. My wife ate 1. My daughter ate 1.5. My son ate a half. And then there were these 2 not on half pieces that like kind of went to waste. But we didn't have leftovers from hot dog night. And I think that's part of like them picking it is like, I go, okay, this is a pick for this meal only, right?
Sure.
Like, your mom and I don't want to cook hot dogs in the middle of our day. We want something we can heat and go. And the other thing I've started doing a lot is I have started, and I would maybe propose this to you as something to consider on the weekends. I know your weekends are busy, but meal prepping some different meals, right? One, I try to pick high protein things. I've mentioned Stealth Health Life on Instagram is sort of my go-to, but right now I've got some lasagna bowls, I've got some chicken Alfredo, and I've got some quesadilla burritos in the freezer that are just grab and go, heat and eat, maybe take 6 minutes to heat up in totality for any given one of them. And we kind of keep those around so that my wife and I have lunches that we can grab, or if the kids are just, kind of a Saturday where it's like, hey, you guys want a turkey sandwich for dinner? You want chicken nuggets? And then we kind of eat something else while they maybe watch a Saturday evening family movie night that their parents aren't actually terribly involved in because it's Moana 2 for the 5th time, or whatever. And so that's sort of shifted for us. We don't quite have as many leftovers, which I'm a fan of. And we've shifted a little bit more into that preparation mode because for a variety of reasons, like I made that chicken Alfredo that I mentioned as a like make-ahead dinner because we have gymnastics on Mondays and my daughter has ballet on Tuesdays and my son right now has soccer on Thursdays. And those can run late. And so it's sort of like we came back from soccer tonight and I had some pork alla arrabbiata in the slow cooker. And it's just a pork, tomato, garlic, red pepper sauce. It's really good. And I just boiled some pasta. But we're trying a lot more prep to sort of have things at hand to accommodate the fact that the kids aren't just coming home after school and there for hours, and I have a solid 30 to 45 minutes to cook a fresh meal right then. That's not always possible. And so you kind of have to adapt to what you have. But the meal prep aspect of like, we've probably got right now 15 to 20 single serving meals ready to go in our fridge. And so, I'm set if it doesn't work out that I can cook something on any given night. And that's sort of been the adjustment of like planning ahead, because life has gotten a little more chaotic with kids' activities. And it wasn't what I mentioned 2 years ago of like, we never get takeout, we're always cooking, like we're always planning and all that stuff. It's still a lot of that, but it has shifted a little bit. So for those of you that are maybe trying to save a buck or save your waistline or whatever, I don't know. I like the meal prepping thing as like a known quantity of like, I really like these. These taste really good. I have some variety, and I know they're like high protein options that are gonna like help me meet my fitness goals, and then it's not gonna stress me out to have to microwave something.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's great. We haven't gotten to the point of actual prepping the food that far in advance. I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we have 15 to 20 single serving meals ready to go. That's an astonishing number. But
each recipe makes like 10 to 12, right? So it's like a bunch of things that I've cooked over different time. Like it wasn't like I did one cook on one Sunday. It's like the lasagna bowls are a month and a half old, right?
Gotcha.
Like,
okay.
So it's just sort of
Throw it in
like
the
once
freezer.
it gets really low, I'll make another one as one of our weeknight meals, but I portion them out and freeze all the rest.
Gotcha. Okay. So we've done a much better job, as I mentioned, of just meal planning. And then if there's certain things based off of, as long as one of us is home essentially by 5:30, and usually one of us is, and there's not something else going on, we can normally get dinner ready by 6:30, between 6 and 6:30, to just have a fresh meal. We buy a lot more ready to go freezer stuff now. I'd love to get to the point where we're just making stuff and putting it in the freezer, but I think honestly that's a little bit away. And now that neither of us are working from home, the grab and go option for lunch is not really what we're trying to do anymore. It's more just every night. And I'll actually bring this into working on the dad bod. So, I mentioned multiple times this episode and before that I'm now going to work into the office 5 times a week. I joined the gym at work. I've made myself a promise that if I'm going to work, I'm going to work out. And I have done so every day that I have been back in the office. I am so there was one day I teleworked last week, but I've gone every day since then, and I actually jogged that day that I teleworked. But tomorrow would be 20 straight workday workouts once I hit the gym tomorrow. And so I'm a little annoyed because last week after going down 6 pounds over these first 3 weeks of working out, I actually gained 0.2 pounds this week. I think I can contribute that to a couple of things. I want to say that my body has probably adjusted to the new normal a bit. And, I've been this is my 3rd week of this workout that I had ChatGPT generate for me. I am upping my reps. I am upping weight. I am doing better on the cardio. And, I've also gotten very strict actually with my diet during the day. And I've also noticed that I have inadvertently began intermittent fasting just because of my schedule during the day for the most part. So I don't eat anything, get the kids into school, get to the office, set up my laptop. If I don't have a meeting for 30 minutes, I walk over to the Panera, use my Sip Club, get myself a coffee. I pretty much don't eat until I have already worked out. And then I end up having the same thing every day at the office, which is my cottage cheese with everything bagel seasoning and chia seeds, and usually 2 fruits. It's usually a banana and a green apple. Sometimes, if the bananas are not ripe yet, it's a green apple and a bag of grapes. But for the most part, I am just straight intermittent fasting, just out of necessity, or not necessity, just out of habit. Having coffee, those 3 items, and then, I can cut an additional 1,300 calories out of my week if I gave up my passion papaya green tea from Panera as part of the Sip Club. It is honestly, though, the one thing in my workday that brings me joy, so I don't want to cut it out. But I don't add ice to it, and I get the large, and it's essentially 284 calories that I'm just drinking every day. And I could, I clearly that would help me in my goal. But man, it brings me joy. So I'm not going to make any changes tomorrow, but maybe next week I cut out a little bit of joy. We'll see. Or I find something else that could negate it slightly. I don't know. But anyway, I'm up 0.2 pounds on my full nude pre-recording workout and or weigh-in. And, so I think I can attribute it to my body adjusting. We'll see if, things change next week. But overall, I'm looking better. I'm feeling better. And I'm happy with the progress I've made. So.
Yeah. And there could be some muscle gain in there, but there's a lot of factors. So I want to share this with you because I think it will be helpful for everybody that listens, the millions of you out there, but you as well. Last week, I weighed in at 178.2 pounds. And that was April 3rd at 6:41 a.m. April 10th, today, at 6:07 a.m., I weighed in at 178.2 pounds. That is the exact same weight, the exact same number. The other times I weighed myself, April 6th, 179.8 pounds, so Sunday. Monday, 180.2 pounds. April 9th, 179.4 pounds. And then again today, 178.2. I didn't do something magic between yesterday and today. Mm-hmm. I got to the exact same point, 0.0 pounds difference, week over week. So what I report on a Thursday on this podcast makes it sound like nothing changed and there were no fluctuations. And I didn't do something magic on any one of those days that I can particularly remember that would make me, go way up or down. Sometimes it's just body fluctuation. And I'm not here advocating to you that you need to weigh yourself more often. You need to do what's right for you, because I have been there before that if you weigh yourself every day, sometimes it can get into like, I had a bad day yesterday. It's really easy to make yesterday the villain.
And that's happened to me.
Or micromanage, overthink all the little things. Oh gosh, was it this scotch that I'm drinking? I've been sipping on all episode or whatever. Sometimes it's just your body's ebbs and flows. Like maybe I had some salty food. I don't know. I don't need an explanation for it. I got to the same point. I was kind of pleasantly surprised because every weigh-in since last Thursday had been heavier. Frankly, a couple were heavier in a row. And I got back today. I go, damn, that's the exact same thing. And so that's just a reminder that like it's a point in time. You got to look at the trend lines week over week. Are you going in the right direction? There's probably a lot of factors. I will say regarding my weight, I'm perfectly fine at 178.2 because when I was listening back to our old episode, well, I didn't do it. We didn't do it on that episode because that was before we actually introduced this segment. Because it was before we were working on the diet, which was when we introduced this segment. But I've listened back to some of our old episodes as well. And like 180 was my goal, was my initial goal to get to. I just want to get down to 180, call it. And I've gotten there. That doesn't mean the dad bod is completely gone. I'm not trying to be an Instagram model or something like that. But I also think that, I'm going to see how this next week goes at my 2,100 calories per day. I'm I'm good, but not perfect at tracking. And so I want to try and lock in on the tracking for a week, see what that effect might be day over day and over the course of the week. And then I have about 4 weeks until a guy's trip I'm taking with my dad to go to the PGA Championship. And so I might just do like a 4-week cut and see if I can get down to 175. Just see if I can hit that number. Because I did pretty well in January when I was intentionally cutting and I had a defined period that I was going to do it. And it really didn't matter the results, but I just wanted to like go hard at it, be perfect for a short period of time. I really liked it. And I've really liked the now 2+ months of the maintenance. And I'd like to get back to doing the maintenance again. But we'll see how next week goes. And I may start next week doing like a quick 4-week cut, trying to lose a pound a week, see how that goes, you know, for 4 weeks and see where it is. But I, you know, all my BMI and body fat and weight metrics are in the green, according to my app that I had never heard of until I bought this scale. So I feel really good based on those kind of random lines in the sand.
So that actually reminded me. So last week, after 3 weeks of working out, on Friday at the gym at work, you can sign up for an in-body scan. So essentially, I have one of those scales that does a bunch of things, but this one has the you hold on as well, and it gives you it generates all of your body percentage and whatever. And there was a really funny
You remember last year for my birthday when I was trying to hit my goal? That's exactly what I did, but I had like the steroid medication that made me like gain 10 pounds in like 3 days or something. Yeah,
I remember,
that was it.
Yeah, so I did one of those, and it was really funny because it was actually made me a pound heavier. I was in clothes, so I unlike when we recorded the night before. But there was one point where, it had me on the I was just to the right of all the averages. So it was, basically just on the wrong side of the border for current physical speed. And so I was, so that's fine. But the funniest part was she goes, so this is your weight. And this number right here is your water weight. And basically, it said that of my 195 pounds, 150 of them were water weight. And she goes, you're just really well hydrated. and I thought, interesting. So what you're telling me is to dehydrate myself and lose a lot of weight, which I obviously did not do.
Osmosis Jones over here.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It was just so funny. Anyway, that's that was just a funny little anecdote I will
say this made me dive into my metrics that my essentially the same technology, electrical pulses that my Amazon scale gives me. And it does say I have 104 pounds of my 178 is body water. It's not quite 150, but it is still 58.8% of my body, which is weird because it also says that my skeletal muscle is 93.6 pounds. And I guess you can have water in your muscles.
Yeah.
I take creatine most mornings, which is specifically to get water in your muscle cells. Fine. But yeah, I mean, like I feel that on the thing, because what it made me do of you going, I'm just to the right of all the things. I look at it because I go, I'm in all the green, and I look at it and I'm like on the right side of the correct side, right? And I'm like, okay, it's good,
right?
But it's like really close to not being okay, according to again some metrics that this is not how you should not.
No, it was just
talk to doctors and all that stuff. But it could be a fun game thing. But then I'm like going down, and it's like muscle mass category 77.3% high, and I'm like,
yeah,
let's go.
Hell yeah, that's great.
More protein shakes.
Protein shakes.
But everything, it's like my BMI, the cutoff is 25 to be overweight at 24.9.
Yeah, so
and it's like, okay,
so
I'm healthy.
Yeah, I'd have to grab mine, but it was
according to this metric.
Yeah, so this one, assuming I am still at work in 6 to 8 weeks, she said you now have an account in here. So every 6 to 8 weeks, if we do this, we can just see how you're doing. So that's
I really thought about going back to my in-body scan a few weeks later once I dropped that like 10 pounds of water weight or whatever it was. I think it was more, honestly, but dropped out that water weight and had them go, what have you done? Because it's kind of one of those pseudoscience places. It's like, we've got infrared light and this thing and this thing to like lower your toxins and boost your antioxidants. And I'm like, those aren't real things.
not real things.
That these things do or actually contribute to health in any meaningful way, but go off. Anyway, that's all I got.
Right, man. Yeah, same here. And to everybody, we want to thank you for working on the Dad Pod with us, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.